Wow. Oh, and also,
Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock and we're live.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this City Commission work session to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo,
Hello.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso,
here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell,
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy, Commissioner Herman Robinson is absent.
Okay, well, we've got a special session. I just want to mention, because people saw Commissioner Robinson was gone on Tuesday, and this evening he had a routine procedure, and he's in great health and good condition and just recuperating. So our thoughts and wishes go out to him and his family right now.
There you go. I'm sure he wishes he was here right now.
He does, actually. I spoke to him.
Right. Well, Madam Mayor and Commissioners, welcome to this workshop. As you know, we've been working with consultants, Trina and now Belinda, and I'll let you, they'll do their self-introductions with all their alphabets behind their names. But in the interest of, and groups do this, and legislative bodies and boards of directors bring in consultants to talk about how to be effective as teams and how to work together towards policy goals. And it's the same thing that we're doing here as we've gone through a process of creating our strategic plan and the big vision and the policy direction of this board. We thought it was important that you also concurrently get some of that training and sessions, and hopefully that will give you some tools and the things that you need to be an effective team. And I think that's what we're delving into here tonight. And without any further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce Trina and let her start the session, please.
Excellent, thank you.
Excellent. Madam Mayor, Commissioners. That's my copy.
Nope,
I'll
you
move
need
that.
your script. I took your script.
Thank you. Just to introduce myself very briefly, my name is Trina. This is Melinda. We are from Trainovations. We are a local consulting group. We only work with local government. We typically work through Florida Atlantic University's Institute of Government. That's how we get here today. The largest client we work with locally is Broward County. They employ 7,000 people. And the smallest group we work with currently, once a year, we work with the village of Tequesta with their 98 employees, including fire and police. So that's a little bit about us. We do consulting work and training and development, and those are the income streams that we have. So that's a little bit about us. Tonight, we have two objectives. So our workshop objectives tonight are to discuss and agree and commit to some methods and tools to increase teamwork so that this body can move forward with some big strategic ideas that are coming forward. You also have your CIP budget that will be presented coming, and again, big decisions have to be made. So the more effective you can be, the better off the city will be in achieving its goals. I brought a couple of things. We're not going to really use these. I may refer to them. I have two books. One, I highly recommend. It's a storybook. If you haven't read it, it's fantastic. It's called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's available in audio on YouTube and on Audible. And it's a fable. But it's got some really great tips and tools in it. This is someone that we refer to quite often to build healthy cultures. And so when we had a 3-year project with the city of Fort Lauderdale, helping them to change the culture of their work environment. This is the basis for which we used. The second book I brought, I don't know if this is available. This was a part of my certification in a program called True Colors. And that's something that we are going to do tonight. We're going to just walk through. What it does is helps us understand our differences. And I'll talk about the principles of True Colors when we get to that place. But I brought it for us so that we could look at it as we walk through. So those are the 2 things that I recommend right off the bat. So the other piece of so that's the first objective. The second objective is to learn about each other as individuals. The tool we will use, as I indicated, is True Colors. And that's just simply a tool. So those are our workshop objectives. We've been through this. When we did our interviews, when we spoke to each of you individually, we walked through some of this. As you could see, there's the elected body on one side, city staff is on the other, and then the city manager's office is sort of the liaison between those two. You each received a handout that we provided. It's a handout that we use with every elected body that we work with. And again, it's a very simple version of how best to work with city staff and what is your role as an elected body. Any questions on this? This is the easy part. All right. Hearing none, we'll move forward. So we did interview you. We got a lot of great information. We also saw some of your differences, which we heard. And probably the best thing about those interviews was how passionate each of you are in what you believe in. And again, all really good things for the city. So what we found was that all of you are dedicated and passionate about making this city a better place. You care, you believe that what you're trying to do is the best thing for the city. And you each have the things that are true for you personally. And so that's a big strength that you have. You're all willing to communicate on the dais. And of course, we've seen that. Maybe some passion around that communication, but you're willing. As opposed to sometimes when we walk into an elected body, we'll see a commissioner shut down or a council member just not having a voice. We did not find that. We find that each of you has a voice and are passionate about what you believe in. And you represent a level of diversity that represents the city. Out of the five of you, there is quite a bit of diversity. Again, a little bit different from when we go to some other cities. There's not nearly the diversity, and sometimes I'm not sure that those elected bodies actually represent the population in a diversity, from a diversity standpoint. So kudos to you. Those are huge strengths. Now, with that comes your differences. The biggest weakness, two big weaknesses that we found. One is that when you communicate on the dais, it's emotionally charged. And again, I believe that's because you're passionate about what you believe in. But I think that with a little bit of understanding of each other, hopefully we'll get to some of that stuff tonight, and perhaps some guidelines around how you will operate as a team will move us past some of that. So that's my hope for tonight. There's also a perceived, so among you, you each have a perception, and maybe not all of you, and it may be to different levels, and I get that, but there's a perception of a lack of willingness to understand each other. So it becomes defensive. And I want to address that tonight using two things that we're going to do tonight, and then some additional tools that we're going to leave you with. We're going to leave you with two additional tools. So hopefully that will be one step. Please understand, we cannot 100% wave our magic wand and put our magic dust on the table and make all of the issues go away. It's a process, and it takes time. And so we hope that this is a first step towards that, and that's our hope. Questions or comments?
No.
Anything to add? All right. So we asked some questions. We asked you to score from 1 to 10. So 10 being we're amazing, can't get any better, we're the best end all. 1 being we could probably do a little bit better. The average scores are what you see. So we asked, how well does each person work with you personally? How well does each commissioner work with you? By your admission, average score is a 4. So what that means is maybe one of you scored higher, maybe one a little bit lower, but the average was around 4. Not the best, but I think what we're going to talk about today and what we're going to do at the table perhaps will address that issue. The next question we asked was, how well do you think the team collaborates? This was by far the lowest of the scores. And so the average was a 3. So again, this is a process. We can't fix it tonight. I don't think after tonight we're going to walk out of here and y'all are going to score a 10 on everything. But I do think that we can get there. And then the third question was, how would you score the team on its ability to accomplish long-term goals? And again, I think that as you experience some of what happens on the dais from meeting to meeting, this score perhaps was a little bit lower than we would like it to be. So our goals are to bump these scores. Our goals are to sort of, what industry would say, move the needle, right, as we look at our cliches. So we want to move the needle a little bit and bump these scores up. So what this tells us is there's a lot of room for increased teamwork and commission effectiveness, which is why we called for the workshop. The achievement of a higher average score is possible. We have to make some changes. And so we're going to offer you what will amount to 4 different tools to help move that forward. And if we use them well, and again, it's not going to be perfect come two Tuesdays, right?
Tuesday.
This coming Tuesday? October 1st.
Yeah.
It won't be perfect. So don't have expectation it's going to be perfect. But again, maybe a little bit of moving the needle. So after watching numerous, we have spent hours and hours watching commission meetings online. Thanks to Darian and his team and Jess for forwarding those links, we are able to watch those meetings, including this past meeting that just occurred. And what we have sort of surmised is that the commission wants what's best for the city. There's no doubt about that. And again, I listened to this past Tuesday's meeting. Some of your very impassioned comments indicate what you believe will move the city forward, each of you individually. There are common agreements on really high level. So really high level. Economic development, as an example, is important to each of you. Education, mobility. These are things that you all think are really important. How you get there, each of you has a little bit of a different viewpoint. And so that's, and each of you has a different priority. And that's where things kind of get a little bit messy. Each individual, each of you.
Okay. There we go.
Timed out.
You're back on.
It's your,
You just have to move the mouse or something.
it's your magnetic personality.
So each individual commissioner's perspective on how to get there is viewed as right. So you each think that you're right. And that's where, again, I think that if we could remember some of the bigger picture items, we can move forward and move that needle. So here are some suggestions. And again, we're going to cover some of these, but we can't do everything in the time that we have. So one suggestion is improve some team effectiveness processes. These are processes in listening. We're going to cover that tonight. Understanding, we're going to cover that. Considering. I think sometimes we're a little quick to jump in with what we believe is the right thing, and again, with a very impassioned dialogue. And And sometimes I just want to reach into the screen and go, everyone take a breath. Everyone take a breath. So considering is something. Compromising and consenting. We're going to cover consenting tonight because we have found in our experience consensus as a concept and consensus as a council or commission are seen as two different things. And we're going to sort of provide you with a tool to help get to some consensus. And then the other thing that we're going to do, which is one of our 4 tools, is we have gone out to a variety of other organizations. We have gotten best practices. We're going to offer up a grouping of team guidelines that we believe will help this commission move forward in a more team-oriented, effective manner. And then by the end of today, when you know your consensus process, we will hopefully commit and consent to those team guidelines. And if not, then consent to working on them, because we may not be able to adjust them to your satisfaction. But they are best practices, and we'll show you who they're cited from. Questions or comments? Okay, so this is an activity. This is called True Colors. Let me give you a brief history of what this is. Have you guys heard of or done MBTI, Myers-Briggs? Myers-Briggs Temperament Indicator. So the Myers-Briggs Temperament Indicator is the most widely used tool for identifying one's preference. So when I say preference, what does that mean? Put the mic down for a second. Everybody cross your arms, front of your chest like this. Now, I want you to uncross them and recross them in exactly the opposite way. Still thinking, not really sure. Maybe. Is one more comfortable than the other?
Yes.
Whatever the one you got there first.
Sure. It's more comfortable. It's what we do, right? It's what we do. Is this doable? This is doable, right? If somebody paid me to stand around in the opposite pretzel, I'd make money doing that, right? It's doable. But we clearly have a preference. Are any of you left-handed? So that's a preference, right? We write, when you pick up a pencil or a pen.
I think I was left-handed, but they made me right-handed.
Who's nuns?
No, seriously, because I open things with my left. I go to grab with my left, but I write with my right.
So more than likely, you had a preference, and you learned to do it differently. Just like if I had to re-pretzel my arms for the rest of my life in the opposite direction, it would probably get comfortable. Has anyone ever broken their dominant hand? Broken your dominant hand?
Dominant arm.
Dominant arm? Did you have to do stuff with your left hand?
For about a week. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I could get the finger. I could use my fingers to do. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was clearly more comfortable.
Most certainly.
Right? I broke my right wrist in 5 places, and I was without the use of this arm for 4 months. So you can imagine what writing on a flip chart looked like using my left hand. So clearly I have a preference. Now some people have a preference for one thing and not another. So Melinda, do you want to talk about your...
So I aspire to be an artist. I'm not nearly there yet. But when I write right-handed, I'm kind of like you. I think someone taught me to be right-handed, but everything else I do left-handed, including painting. So I'm more comfortable holding a paintbrush and doing all of my painting left-handed. But if I have to sit down and write notes, I do what I was trained to do as a child. So as Trina says, we all have these preferences. the good news is that even though we're trained to do something one way, we can always relearn. You know, we can retrain ourselves. And that's one of the best things about, you know, about some of the tools that we're going to be teaching you tonight. You're going to find that you have some preferences to do things a certain way. But hopefully, as we start you down this path, one of the things that you'll see is that, you know what, it's not so, change is not so bad. I'm a big change agent. I know you guys have just met me tonight, so just 2 seconds of my background. I was the IT director for the city of Jupiter for 27 years, and prior to that, I worked for Palm Beach County. So, you know, I have a government background, and I know that it's hard for us to change. That was my job for 30 plus years of introducing change and getting staff to change and working with our council and Palm Beach County, the commission sometimes as well. So, but when we introduce these changes, it's because we're working to serve the citizens better. And so it's not easy, but we can do it. I hope that was the only story that you wanted, because I'm the storyteller.
Great story.
Quick question. What if it's actually not change, it's just not learned yet? Or you haven't dealt with it yet, so you're not actually changing anything, you just haven't dealt with it or addressed it.
So what you're changing is from not knowing to knowing.
Okay.
And a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. I can't tell you how many times our organization gets together, we sit around a table, and they're like, but it was so obvious, why didn't you just do this? And my response is, it didn't occur to me. It just didn't occur to me. And I'm not, you'll see as we walk through this, we'll reveal our colors as well. You'll see that I am not the person who's going to go out and research and learn and look at. And I mean, honestly, if you were, neither one of us live here. If you weren't our client, we wouldn't watch your commission meetings. You know, and trust me, we have lots of them to watch. And so, you know, we don't know what we don't know. And so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to determine what is our color, what is our preference. Not that the rest of this isn't doable. We have all of it in all of us. And the reason I brought up the MBTI, or the Myers-Briggs, is it's because it's the most widely used. So if you have it, you've taken it, yes?
In college
MBTI?
once,
Yeah.
Do you remember?
No.
Do you remember?
No.
That's the problem with it. You get a combination of 4 letters when you're done with the assessment. Now, I know mine. You know yours? And Melinda knows hers. We're certified in that as well. But the issue is that most people don't remember it. So the people that came up with this said, we can modify it because everybody will remember if they're a green or a blue or a gold or an orange. Because that's easier. And when we do this in organizations, we typically have dots, and we have them put their dot on their name badge. And so it helps me. The reason why it's useful is because it helps me when Melinda and I are in a disagreement. I have to remember that part of her MO is that she has a preference that I don't have. And we'll talk about how that plays out. And we have all 4 colors in our team. And the reason that Melinda is so critical on our team is because when we needed that new team member, we went out to find someone who fit that missing puzzle piece. And so that's great. But now, when we get together and we do a team meeting, Trina is really annoying to Melinda. Not on purpose. I don't intend to be annoying. I just have a different preference. And so how do we deal with that? And I think that's one way. There's probably a million ways, but that's one way to help us take a look at how do we show up on the dais, so just a little bit differently. So having said that, we're going to hand out these cards. Please take the cards out of, just take one and pass. Take the cards out of the jacket and put the jacket aside. We're just going to look at the cards. Now I want you to put the cards in front of you with the picture side up, and I want you to order them in the order that most resonates with you. So the one you like the best is going to be on the left, and the one you like the least is going to be on the right.
Don't look at my cards.
Loves you.
Anybody need more time? Okay, so very quickly, who would like to go first? Why did you choose blue as your first card?
Because it resonated with me.
And what about that?
The blue card has relationships and happy things, friendships, love.
Okay. Who would like to go next?
I can go next. Yellow, business plan. I truly believe, being a small business owner, that if you don't have a business plan, you're not successful, and you need a business plan to start. So I look at everything, start with a business plan. You know, I was trained that way, so to speak, that, you know, you want to open a business, the first thing you need is a business plan. You want the city to be successful, you need a business plan. You want to help local merchants, you need a business plan. The second one, love, I see friendships, I see partnerships, I see, you know, families. I just noticed the Paris, but that didn't jump out at me. The third one, you know, I see, you know, communications, I see, you know, intervention, I see, you know, travel and space, and, you know, everywhere you could be,
Okay.
you know, where you might want to go.
And orange is your last card.
The orange, it just didn't call to me, you know, as I analyze it a little bit more, looking at it, you know, the eagle's soaring, you know, where can we go? We can soar, you know, a guy on a ski, you know, maybe that allows me to, you know, do more, you know, thinking outside the
But
box.
clearly gold is the one that resonates with
Correct.
you.
I didn't go through all mine.
That's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
okay.
she was done. Sorry.
It's all good. Commissioner Maxwell, why was gold the one you put first?
Well, I guess just because I consider myself to be pretty analytical. Things have to be in order. And as Commissioner Amoroso mentioned, you know, there needs to be some sort of a roadmap to, you know, when you're doing anything you're doing, from, you know, where you started to where you want to go, there needs to be a process and a roadmap to get there.
So gold prize roadmap for you.
Goals, right, exactly. Second card, the green card, you know, kind of ties in with the gold, and that is, I'm willing and I enjoy doing a lot of research and asking a lot of questions sometimes to see how we can improve on the gold piece of it. And then the third card, of course, is the having a good time, you know, play hard, you know, work hard, play hard. And, well, the fourth one, unfortunately, is the blue card. And my wife, I hope you're not listening.
You
I'm in
just
big
lost the
trouble.
love.
I'm going to be in the yard tonight. But
You love dogs.
no, I mean, you know, it's tough. I mean, if you really want to, if you want to talk about a personal, emotional order of the cards, well, then maybe the order changes a little bit. But when you're talking about, you know, what we need to do as commissioners, what we're
I
doing
just
is,
want to know what resonates with you
no,
most.
okay, well,
So I think you put them in the order that is your preference.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
well, again, I took it in the context of what we do you know, for the community.
Okay.
So,
And it would change if it wasn't?
well, if it was a personal thing,
What if it was your work,
well, isn't that what we're doing here?
your outside work?
Oh, my outside.
other work.
My other work, well, then obviously, we would probably move the love thing here up there, and I would probably move it to, what?
Me either.
Okay, fine.
Love thing.
Just in case the wife is listening.
In case you're listening, Paul.
Okay. All right. Good. And how come green came up top for you? What resonates with you?
You got the thinking man in there. It's it's like a bunch of people trying to get to the true nature of things, and so that resonated with me first. Definitely.
And what about orange? I'm curious.
Oh, looks like a bunch of people having fun. I mean, pursuing their passions. I think passion is probably the thing that jumped out to me the most. And so I chose that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good. All right. So here's what we're going to do. On your pad, I want you to write the order in which you placed them.
And we're calling the yellow card gold.
Yeah, the yellow one is gold. And the reason we're doing this is so that we can assign values to the card, to the colors.
Orange or red?
Orange.
It's orange.
That is definitely red. What else?
Oh my god.
Oh,
Wait, why did they put a gavel over here? I shouldn't have them.
You're a gavel. That's funny.
Goodness. All right.
All right. So I just want to check to make sure I got the colors.
I'm just really upset that they all got to say what they wanted and I only got to say, well,
I stuck to my one. I did my second one when asked.
kidding.
As a blue, that doesn't surprise me that you would say that.
Wow.
That doesn't surprise me. All right. So, do you want to talk about your orange?
Do you want to hear mine?
Oh, is he gonna get to say all four?
You're playing along?
I'm playing along. I chose orange because I look at that card and I see excitement and enthusiasm for living, taking risk. And also, there's a group of people there that looks like they're having a good time together, succeeding at something. I ride motorcycles. I do all kinds of things, and that's what I love about life. You're living on the edge.
So, two questions.
It's not a usual city manager answer, is it?
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
I think you'd be surprised.
They're usually repressed.
So just from this part of the exercise, there's 3 parts to the exercise. So just from this part of the exercise, how would you guess Commissioner Robinson would place his cards?
He would actually have his cards stacked this way.
I think he would be the blue card first.
I would agree. I think he'd be probably blue gold.
Blue. I think he'd be blue.
I think it'd be orange.
Blue orange.
Blue orange or
No, I
orange?
think it's orange blue.
I think it'd be orange blue.
Yeah, probably so.
And what do you think Juan would be?
Oh, Juan's got to have a plan.
Yeah, he's orange.
I surround
yellow.
people who balance me, and he's very much.
he would be gold
He's
first.
driving.
Gotta have a plan.
He's driving. Let's get from A to B. What's the plan?
I think he'd be orange too.
Probably be gold orange.
Well, he has a lot of the
Gold orange.
qualities in here because he is a blue too. He's a big cream puff, but
Athlete.
he's listening right now. You know this.
Family man.
Okay, so you've written on your pad the order in which you placed your cards. The one that's all the way to the left gets a value of 4, because that's the one that most resonates with you. The next one a 3, the next one a 2, and the next one a 1. Now, that's called the picture sort. We're going to resort the cards, flipping them over. You're going to read a little bit about each one. And you're going to order them the same way. The one that resonates most with you on the left, and the one least on the right. Not everything is going to be a perfect fit, so you have to sort of juggle and make some decisions. And we'll give you some time to read the backs of those cards. Need more time?
Yes.
I'm orange. What was the question again?
Aren't you glad you came tonight?
Aren't you glad?
I have a hard time with the two that.
Yeah, I did too. I wanted them.
They seem to be the same, but two of them are a little bit
Yeah.
crossing.
It's okay. It's not going to be a perfect fit. Just pick the best you can. Okay. So,
I need some more time.
you need more time? I'm sorry.
I'm a slow reader.
No, no.
He's definitely agreed.
Thank you.
It's like one section is completely wrong, like on both of these cards. The other ones are all 3/4 of the way. One section is just I don't know whether to change it or not change it.
Need more time?
I'm okay. I'm good now.
Okay. All right. So, Commissioner Maxwell, have you changed your order?
No,
It stayed the same.
stayed the same.
Okay.
I want to note, though, that as Mayor Pam just noted, there are a couple of situations where one of the four narratives there at the bottom of the card kind of caused me to say, well, you know what, I'm not 100% there, which caused the order to be, you know, but I think I'm going to stick with where I
Okay.
am.
Good. Okay. Commissioner Amoroso?
It changed a little bit. My gold is still number one. My green and blue changed, but those, it's kind of like the mayor. Thank you. those are kind of like, there were a couple things and I had to pick which
Yep.
which spot that was going to be in. The orange ended up being last because I consider life as a game here and now. You know, there's nothing in life that's a game. You know, it's very real. So that automatically, as soon as I read that, I didn't even read the rest. It just jumped to the end.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Right?
The same.
Did your order change?
Yeah, I switched my last two cards. I switched the gold and the blue card. Previously, the blue card was last, and gold was third to last. Gold became last, and the blue card became third to last.
Okay.
And it was, you know, some of the things that I read, you know, especially towards, you know, the top of the card, you know, idealistic, spiritual, sincere, communicative, compassionate, talking about,
Not you?
not,
Not so much?
well, that was last previously. That this card, the blue card, was last. I guess it was really the thing that the gold, you know, like I wanted to follow rules and regulations, you know, of school last. I understood and respected authority, was comfortable with academic routine. So yeah, that I have conservative views of love and marriage. That certainly.
Green and orange are
Green and
pretty
orange.
solid.
Solid, yeah.
And
I'm orange green.
did you switch?
No, I did not.
And so the first two are pretty solid for each of you. Is that right? I get that right? Just about? These are yours to keep, by the way.
Oh, okay.
They're-
Never mind
you
then.
can- Yeah, you can keep them.
You had mentioned that you weren't sure if you could get that again, and I didn't know if that came with that. So
Yeah, no, this is, I just don't know if this book is available.
I didn't know if they were partners. So thank you.
No, I got this at my certification, so I brought it because it's got cool stuff in it. So, so for all of you, it seems the first two are fairly solid. Would you agree on that?
Mhm.
Pretty much? All right, so here's what we're going to do. You're going to, again, create a value for each of those cards. So your first card, the one that's all the way on the left, is a value of 4. And then 3, 2, 1, however, those colors. And now what I want you to do is add the total for each of the colors as you scored them. So if you had green to the left twice, you would score that as an 8 because you would have a 4 and a 4.
What kind of sword is this one called?
This is the word sort. So there's a picture sort, there's the word sort, and then we're going to do one more sort. But you'll need the total of these before we're done. So if you had blue last both times, you should have a value of 2 for that one, for blue. That makes sense?
Mhm.
Good. Good. All right, now we're going to move to the jacket. And the reason we gave you pencils is because since you get to keep these, you might not want to write in them. A lot of people don't. And this is called the cluster sort. And the way this works is this. You are going to read across the row, and you're going to put a 4 in the box with the words that most resonate with you. If you think that's most like you, you're going to put a 4. The one that's least like you, you're going to put a 1. You're going across. So I'll do the first one. We'll do the first one together. Active, opportunistic, spontaneous. That's kind of like me. Parental, traditional, responsible. That's kind of like me. Versatile, inventive, competent. Not so much. Authentic, harmonious, compassionate. Not so much. So I got 2 that are gonna probably be a 4 and a 3, and then 2 that are gonna be a 1 and a 2. So I have to pick which one's gonna be a 4, which one's gonna be a 3, which one's gonna be a 1, and which one's gonna be a 2.
So we're,
Hang on.
If-
Commissioner.
I'm sorry. If we don't want to write on this,
Yes.
could I literally just like make a copy of it? Yeah, thank you. I would appreciate it.
Yeah, me
Does anyone
too.
else want
Yeah,
copies?
go ahead and do that.
Make 5, please.
can I have a crayon? Because I don't think I have a pen.
I want the sticky markers.
Oh, here's a pencil. I'm sorry. We have a pencil and we have markers.
How does this work?
That part I can tell you.
Oh, it's a broken one. It's broken. That's why it's not working. It's
There's
okay.
a reason why I don't like purple.
Yeah. Here's.
And that's another reason why.
It's been solved.
The eraser does work. Not very good.
Okay, so do we understand what the instructions are?
Yes. There you go.
So each line from top to bottom, the top line, left to right, we have to rank 1 through 4. Yep. Okay.
And then, because some of you are gonna wanna go ahead of the team, these blank boxes here are for the scores that you just did. So if you had an 8 for green,
Thank you.
you're gonna put an 8 in this box up at the top
Gotcha.
and then add down. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Sunshine.
Thank you. Yeah, we do this a lot, and people don't wanna write in the car, because they wanna color their world, so they bring it home.
I know what you are, like to know what other people are.
So you're going across
Mhm.
this way? Yes.
I did it. I got it.
Not only does he got it, but he already put he's already got his totals in there.
I'm authentic, adventurous, and shh.
scary.
Checking my mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually people pull up their phones.
I did. Did you see them?
No. Oh, yeah, no.
Hey,
No cheating.
Copy off my paper.
he copied.
I'm compassionate, not him. Why did he write that?
What? 4862. Oh,
It was great. Was
Put your notes up here.
the fight? The fight.
I put my totals.
Oh, is that what you're-
I thought it was-
I smell my people.
You put the totals from the first 10 boxes.
Huh?
Total from the first 2 exercises.
Oh.
To these boxes.
Oh, now you got it.
Complimented big. It was fun.
Okay. Blue.
He intentionally backs that thing off so he put it behind his
I need
ear.
a calculator.
You can use your phone.
Take your shoes
Okay.
off.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to
I'll
mess
take
this
my
up.
shoes off. I'll use my toes.
Just use your fingers.
That's so much faster.
It's funny we can add millions of dollars, but I have trouble with single digits.
The ones and twos.
You can see
Those are the ones I'm
I got it wrong a couple of times.
It's so funny how the same colors as the first round. Place the 2 cards were the ones that you could sort of switch back and forth based on
Mhm.
some of the words. You're like, that's right on. That's not me. That's right. No, that's not me.
I mean, some people switch completely from the first to the last.
Really?
Oh yeah.
That's interesting.
It's the 2 and the 1 for me. In that it was the same pattern. It seems like the 2 and the 1 were where things. Yeah, it is actually. Look at 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1.
But the 4s and the 3s are pretty solid.
Differently.
Which,
really hard to do.
which way is it? It's like my comfort is this way.
You do this?
This was my comfort. This was.
You know, I always heard that this was somebody they're shutting themselves off.
Yeah.
But then I also heard that it's a comforting feeling to actually sort of give yourself a hug and
No.
they're really not putting.
I was told never,
Yeah.
when you're having a conversation with anybody,
That's-
that shut you
I
down.
was that too.
No,
but
you
then
don't
I heard,
cross your arms.
Never.
then I heard opposite from
Mm-mm.
some. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
What
It's kind
you
of like yawning. Yawning
Oh, you-
is
you need to
actually
mimic-
trying to pay attention and get
need to
oxygen.
mimic the person that you're talking to.
No, I agree
If
with
they
you. I
lean
never
in,
do
you
this
lean
when I
in.
talk to
If they lean back,
It's like
lean back.
using your glasses and doing.
Okay. So, all right, so we've added up our scores. We've done this exercise. We've done 3 different sorts, and we've added up our scores. We are concerned with, and only concerned with, our top score or our top 2 scores. Here's what makes the difference. Does anybody have a highest score that is 3 points higher or more than the next score? Your highest score is 3 points higher or more. Okay, you are what we call bright color. Oh, all of you?
Oh, yeah, 3.
3 or more.
No.
So your top is green. Is that correct? And your top score is at least 3 points higher than the next one. You're a bright green. That's what you're considered, is a bright green. Commissioner Maxwell?
I had a 28 under gold. And the next lowest score was 15 was my green.
Okay, so you're a bright gold.
Yep.
And I'm right at it. I had an 18 for my gold and a 15 for my green.
Okay, you could be a blend, a gold-green blend, but we'll see. And yours?
28 for the blue, 21 for the green.
So you're a bright blue. Now, you have your top two are
Are
pretty
equal.
close.
Equal.
Equal. So you're
Orange green.
an orange,
Or a green orange.
no, you're an orange-green.
I am an orange green because I had the first.
Because that's the one that always has resonated more with you and the other two sorts, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you're an orange-green. Okay? So here's what this means to us. What it means is, again, as we look at diversity in the group, we have much diversity in the group, especially if we add city manager in as an orange-green. So the three principles that True Colors abides by is this. Number one, do we understand ourselves? And I'm going to walk through what each of these colors means a little bit, although I think you've gotten the gist of it. And then do we understand others? And can we have our commission meetings where we honor those differences? So I'll use myself as an example. I am a gold orange. So gold is my primary color. I have 2 numbers away from orange. So what that means is I am highly structured. I am highly goal oriented. I care very much about time. So I will never be late and I will never end a meeting late. I care very much about those things. What that means is I'm very comfortable in that square, right? In that box, that's what comforts me. That's my preference, okay? As an orange, I'm all about, let's go have some fun. I'm all about, I was at FCCMA and I got a text message and it was like, hey, we're all going to dinner. You want to come? I'm like, yeah. I didn't ask where we were going. I didn't ask what time. I didn't care. It was a whole group of people. That's a good time. I'm in. Make sense? So that's my comfort. That's where I'm comfortable. I am not so blue. I try to be blue. I want desperately to be blue. I work at being more blue, but it's still not my comfort zone. So I don't care if there's not harmony. It's really okay if Melinda and Marcy want to sit at the table and disagree. I only get uncomfortable if they're taking up too much time to disagree. They can go at it. I'm good. I don't intervene. Let them have it. They want to disagree. They'll figure it out. Does that make sense? So green is a very, well, I'll let Melinda talk about green. Why don't you talk about you?
So I'm a green, through and through. I'm a green, and I'm the analytical one. Love data, love plans, love to lay it out. And just kind of give you a recent example, we were working down in Fort Lauderdale, Myra and I, and we were preparing a PowerPoint to teach this class all day. And so Myra sends me the PowerPoint and says, what do you think? I sent her back a 3-page spreadsheet with every slide detailed of who's going to present that slide, how much time it's going to take, when we're going to start it, when we're going to end it, the outcomes of it, right? That's me. That's where I'm comfortable. I like that certainty of process, right? So that's me. I'm also an orange, so I'm a green orange. Again, like to have fun, just like Trina was saying. So I like my certainty of process. I like my data, but when I'm done with that, I want to go out and have a good time too. So should we keep talking about?
So what do you talk about orange.
I just did.
She's ready
You
to go
know,
and have fun.
no, just kind of some of my things are, outdoorsy kinds of things. I'm a scuba diver, love to dive all over the world, Red Sea, Australia, Great Barrier Reef. I mean, anytime there's something like that going on, and by the way, I get deathly seasick. So it is so important to me to have those adventures that I'm willing to suffer those consequences to be able to go out and do those kind of adventure things, hiking, kayaking, just about anything water related. So I'm into nature and having fun those ways. Then should we talk about Marcy, who's our gold? So we're giving you examples of our team. So Marcy is our gold, which is
And she's a bright gold.
yes, she is. So she's kind of big picture. Do you want to talk about her a little bit more about some of her things and how she fits in?
So Melinda talked about herself. She's primarily a green. We share the orange. And Myra, who you met, is a blue orange. So Myra is our person who wants harmony. She very much dislikes if there's conflict. If there's disagreement, she very much dislikes that. She's all about, why can't we get along? Why do we have to disagree on anything? And she's our mediator. So she'll mediate. She'll say, well, Trina, wait. What Melinda has to say is really important. So let's consider what Melinda has to say. And Trina now has to listen, which is hard, because I want to jump in and say what I want, especially because I'm so clock oriented. So Myra will help mediate between us. And we've learned a process, which we're going to give you a handout, and we're going to talk about this process of how do you listen to understand, not listen to respond. So that's how we get past some of our differences. Marcy, as a gold, is very serious, very traditional, very rule-bound, very rule-bound. I'm a gold, but as an orange, I can bend and be a little flexible. Marcy's not flexible. She's, as a gold, she's just not so flexible. So that creates some strife between us. And Myra, as the blue, again, just really wants peace and harmony, and everyone should get along. Now, as Melinda indicated, she's very detail-oriented. If we're going to have a team meeting and I send out an agenda, my agenda consists of 3 bullet points.
We write while we're eating and when we're quitting.
Exactly. Pretty much. And I'll write something in there and we'll go over all current business. Something like that. And what Melinda does, and again, as I've learned not to be annoyed and not to get frustrated, this is her comfort zone. This is what she needs. She sends back a 3-page detailed agenda on what it is that we're doing, what we're going to accomplish, how we're going to measure it, and how long it's going to take to talk about it.
And who's leading each item?
Yeah, and that. And so, again, in the beginning, I misunderstood it. In the beginning, I took it as a personal affront. Like I didn't do a good job. So I took it as a personal affront, and that's frustrating. When I act on that, because of my emotional state, when I act on that, she gets defensive and says, but this is the right way to do it. And then we have we each want to know what's right. Am I hitting some? So while we've done this, it's become easier to understand each other and to really honor those differences. So now we expect a 3-page agenda. I've put out the big picture. Melinda comes back with a 3-page agenda, and some people add stuff and some people won't. Marcy, who is very rule-bound, ensures that absolutely nothing goes out. If she's able to get her hands on it, which sometimes I don't, I bypass her, not on purpose, but because I forget, but she makes sure that things go out with 0 mistakes.
What about Myra?
So Myra again is, you know,
She's the one that looks at the document and says, you know, this is probably not the best phrase to do because maybe it'll be taken a little bit wrong. The other three of us are like, yeah, it gets to the point, tells them what they need to know, send it out. And Myra says, wait. This could be construed a little bit differently depending on where you're sitting. So she's the one that kind of steps in and brings that, that I call it level field to it. So where we're very task oriented, the other three of us in different ways, but very task oriented, Myra will look at it and she balances us out and kind of brings, as I like to say, the humanity to our documents. And yeah, Marcy's the one that, you know, she checks all of the grammar, all of the, you know, where the spelling is correct and the grammar is correct. She does all of that. One of the things that we all have in common is orange. So Myra's not here tonight because she's traveling in Spain. Monday, Marcy leaves for Nepal.
Wow.
So we're all adventuresome in our own ways, and that's one of the threads that really ties us together. One of the other things, and this is kind of what we're talking about, I did True Colors with my staff when I was working in Jupiter. And, you know, obviously in an IT department, probably not surprising to you that we had a lot of greens and a lot of golds, you know, very rule-bound, very analytical, very logical. But we did have one person on my staff who was a blue. And anytime that I was having something going on with a customer, I didn't call them users, they were my customers, and I needed a little more touchy-feely, I would send Bobby. I'd say, Bobby, you know, you're our heart, you know, so, you know, help us to help our customer with this. So what we did is we capitalized on our strengths, but we also recognized what our weaknesses were so that as we came together as a team, we used those strengths and weaknesses to fulfill our mission, which was service to our city. And so that was why this was so important for us to do this. And we loved it. We had our cards up. We'd sometimes have green parties, you know, blue parties, you know, we'd do just different things around them so that we could continue to recognize our differences, our strengths, and where we can support one another.
So we've talked about what are the great things, right? So gold is structured and rule-bound and time-oriented and plans, sets goals. That's all great stuff, don't you think? I mean, that's pretty great. People who have a preference, we have all the colors in us, it's just that we have a preference towards something. So people who have a preference towards blue want harmonious relationships, less conflict, moving things forward in harmony. Well, that's pretty good. That sounds great, right? That's like a great thing. People who are green are detail-oriented. They research. They look for all the different places. The now former, she just retired, assistant deputy tax collector for Palm Beach County, happens to be a very good friend of mine. She and I were consultants together before she was hired by Ann Gannon. She is a bright, bright green. So the good news is I would go to her when I was doing my Sterling and I was doing Baldrige training and I was doing Six Sigma training, and I'd say, I don't understand. Can you just show me how to do this? She would walk over. So her office in the 3rd floor government center, 2 of the walls are whiteboard paint, and 2 of the walls are, one of the walls is a bookshelf. She'd walk over to the bookshelf, pull out a book. She would go, I think it's on page 57. I'd roll my eyes. Can't you just tell me the answer? Like, what? No, you have to learn. No, that's her green coming out. She don't want to tell me the answer. She wants people to learn it. Okay, makes sense? So, and then orange. So that's a really good thing, don't you think? I mean, that sounds great about green. And orange, what's great about orange? Orange is they're huge problem solvers. They think outside the box. They're very creative. They want solutions. And they will...
Mike said it earlier, risk takers. Your oranges are your risk takers.
So if that's all amazing, if that's all fantastic about who we are, well, then what's the downside? Well, the downside is how other people see us. And that's the frustrating part. That's the frustrating part. So I don't walk in the morning to purposefully annoy Melinda. But I know that sometimes she's annoyed by me. It's not purposeful on my part. I just know she's sometimes annoyed by me. She doesn't walk in to purposefully frustrate me. But sometimes I get frustrated. And here's why. So I'll start with me. Golds can be seen as rigid and a little bit to dig your heels in, right? I want what I want and I'm not flexible about it. And sometimes I can be that way. How about green? Green can be seen as, and I'll use Georgette as an example. She just retired about a month ago as Ann's deputy. She's been with Ann since Ann was elected. She came to me very shortly after she moved into her office in Government Center, and she called me up and she said, I don't understand why people think I'm so arrogant and non-approachable. I'm such a nice person. I'm so nice. I don't understand why people think this about me. So I go, come on, let's go to lunch. So we go to lunch, and I said, here's the deal. You appear to other people as being 99% right all the time. That's how you come across. So,
And as a green, that to us is a badge of honor. I say that because early on in my career, I had a manager. He was the manager of applications development for Palm Beach County, and I was talking to him one day, and he looks at me and he says, "How does it feel to be right all the time?" I thought it was a compliment. It took me years to figure out that that wasn't exactly what he was saying to me.
And so, as the deputy tax collector, it was important for her to develop relationships. And yet it was difficult because people thought she wasn't approachable because she was just right all the time. Orange is seen sometimes as being too
Careful.
I'm trying to
Just say it. I'll sign it.
Want us to tell you?
God. I'll go to blue. I'll come back.
I don't know what you're.
I'll come back to that. So blue sometimes is seen as too wishy-washy. So, when we try to get Myra sometimes to make a decision, what she doesn't want to take sides. And so what she'll do is she'll say, well, what Melinda had to say, that was really good. And I really like this, and this. And then Marcy, I really think we should consider what Marcy said about this, and this. And while I think that's great, and I think she should do that because it gets us to consider our differences, sometimes, again, remember, I'm the one that's going, gee, okay, which side are you on here? Like, just pick, right? And so there's that. So orange sometimes is seen as less committed to to what we committed to. So because they're risk takers, and because they're very flexible, and because they are creative and think outside the box, we might have committed to something that's really out there, that looks like it's going to be really great for the city, and you guys are all on board. But now perhaps the orange has found something else out. They're willing to drop this because now it is no longer good for the city. And those of us up here have a really hard time with that. We had a bright orange that worked with us, and she had some ideas that we embraced. And when it turned out that they weren't so hot, as a gold, I had a really hard time dropping them. Even though it was proven that it wasn't going to work. Somehow I thought in my goldness that we could make adjustments. We've invested in this. We ought to make this work. And she was like, nope, it's a bad idea. It's no longer a good idea. Cut ties. What is it called? Cut
bait.
Cut bait.
Cut your losses.
Cut your losses. And sometimes I have a really hard time with that. Melinda, on the other hand, was like, okay, well, we're going to measure it, and we're going to research it, and we're going to prove.
And I've already got this plan, and now you're telling me you want to change the plan midstream after we've made all of this investment in getting to where we need to be. And not only am I opposed to making that kind of U-turn, but now you have to prove to me this new plan is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And not just tell me it's going to work. I want to see the data.
See, somehow I see some of that green though in me too, even though
Could
I'm
be.
blue.
It could be, and that came up as your second
My second
card.
card, yeah.
We have all of, it's not about boxing each other in. It's about understanding that at the end of the day, I still prefer to fold my arms this way. It's what I prefer. It's where I'm comfortable. I'm really not comfortable in this. And Myra and I have worked together for 18 years.
I connected with her when we met too. I did.
And you'll notice that whenever our organization goes out, we always one person never goes by themselves. We always because it pulls out our strengths. So this is how we can be seen. And we have all these other wonderful things about us. And so the idea is, how do we utilize our strengths so that we can talk about it, get more detail around it, talk to the public about it, re-talk about it, stay on a schedule, make a plan,
What do we
and
go-
have everybody get along.
what are we all again? I'm sorry, I missed.
We'll write it up for you.
I'm sorry.
Before we go any further, may I ask
Yes.
a question?
Please.
Because I was very interested to see how, I guess, people see the different colors. But my scores for green, orange, and blue, there were only 2 points apart between the three of them. So I think I've got issues. I mean, they were
We
very
could have told you that
close.
before you started.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I mean, there was only 2 point difference between any one of the three.
So what that means is, here's what that means. What that tells me is that you're pretty clear on where you're most comfortable. You're very clear in your gold self. The rest of it you can do equally. And I'll use myself as an example. The only reason that my blue score has any numbers at all is because you have to put a 1.
Okay.
Now, my orange and green, most people think I'm green because of the nature of my work. And so you think I'm green, but I'm not comfortable there at all. And given the opportunity to offload those tasks to Melinda, I'll do that. But my blue, so I would have 3 over here, and the blue is way over here. And it just means I'm just not that comfortable there. And the good news is I can rely on someone else to do that in my world of work.
And one of the other things, I think Trina's kind of alluded to this a little bit, is that how you are in your work is not always how you see yourself in your personal life. Like when I do this and I think, when I've done this exercise and just thought about me outside of work, actually orange comes up first.
Same with Myra.
Yeah, that's the one that comes up first. Because when I'm out doing my personal life, I'm okay with not having all of the data and the analysis to do it. So that may be a little bit of what you're seeing is that balance between personal and business personas, kind of coming through. And the other thing to remember is that at any given time and in any given situation, one of these colors may outshine the other because the situation, as you're in the middle of it, demands it. So you may be a gold, but now you're in a situation that requires your green to kind of shine through and take a look at the data that you're being presented and analyze that. Or maybe the orange is coming through because what's needed is a little bit of creativity outside of the box thinking. So at any given time, it can change a little bit. But as Trina says, your preference is usually the first one that pops up. That's how you'll try to deal with it first.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll just reiterate as we move on. Understand a little more about yourself. Understand others and how other people, why other people may have responses or may have the comments that they have on the dais. And then honor and respect our differences. And those are the true colors principles. This is all done by a guy named Don Lowry. This organization is out of California. I'll kind of leave this. We can look at it a little bit more later if you want to take a look at stuff. Any other questions or comments on true colors as we now have introduced one of our 3 tools? Okay. All right. So we went out and we looked at best practices among different councils and commissions and where could we find other information. So we looked at Dunedin, Florida, Coral Springs, Tampa, Hastings, Minnesota had some really great stuff online that we were able to grab. We looked into the Institute for Local Government, ICMA, which is always a best practice, and we use the Florida League of Cities as well. So here's what we found. The thing that's in common for councils and commissions that run the most effective is that they not only have policy, okay, which is, you guys already have that, but they have a set of guidelines that are more about the team themselves, okay? So more personal, if you will. And we call those, in our organization, we call those team guidelines. We have them for our organization. Each of the cohorts in the Leadership Academy has them that they developed, and we're going to offer a set of them to you. And then we'll discuss, at the end of offering it, we'll discuss whether you want to use these or whether you want to commit to developing your own. And if you commit to developing your own, that would not be done this evening, but at least you'd have some place to look at as a starting place. So here are some of the best practices, and I think this encompasses 4 or 5 slides. So we'll go over the big picture pieces of it. And again, this is really more about people as a team, not policy.
Will we be getting a copy of this after?
We can, yes, this is, you already have this. You already have this, yeah. The other thing, we do this in our organization, and we do this with senior teams also. So for example, the senior team for the city of Fort Lauderdale, their expanded senior team encompasses 33 people. Those 33 people have team guidelines that we help them work with. So this is an example of commission team guidelines that we pulled from other places. So number 1, take your role, and these are not in any specific order, by the way. Take your role seriously, but not yourself. Keep the formal ups and downs and wins and loses in perspective. Develop a thick skin, and do your best not to take personally the conflicts and disagreements that are a normal part of your new role, or your role as you're in it now. If you don't develop a thick skin, you will overreact to criticism. The second part of that is you will be blamed and criticized for actions of the organization that you had nothing to do with. So as we talk about our next tool, or one of our next tools, our 3rd or 4th tool, will be this consensus process. What you do now is vote. Voting doesn't always get consensus. And we'll talk about why that is in a minute. So if you're at the back end of a 3-2 vote, you're going to get criticized whether you voted for it or not. If it didn't work out, everyone gets criticized. Does that make sense? I mean, I know you guys already know this. Why I'm asking that. Practice civility and respect for discussions and debate. It is critical for a city manager to have a clear policy direction. Now that's happening here because you're starting to go down this path of having a strategic plan. Your job is to set direction. That's the job of the elected body, is to set direction for the city. So when you review your vision, your mission, your strategic objectives, that's all a part of the strategic plan. This past fiscal year, you started to go down that path. Kevin was here, right? Kevin? The visioning session with Kevin was the beginning of going down that path. And then there's next steps that you potentially might take this coming fiscal year. But this is important for the city manager to be able to communicate to his staff the direction of the city, and that all takes place in a strategic plan. Be sensitive to the need for a city manager to sometimes tell you what you don't want to hear. As you've been through and are still going through budget, there are going to be some things you don't want to hear. I watched had the very good fortune of watching Tuesday's Hallandale Beach City Commission as the new city manager, brand new city manager, and the police chief said some things that I don't think they really wanted to hear. And there was some robust debate on the dais. And this is like the last night possible for this. So sometimes that's going to happen. do your homework. I find that people, different elected officials, handle this part differently. So an agenda goes out, and again, I don't know your specific timeframes, but I know it's ahead of time, whatever it is, whether it's 2 weeks or 7 days or 4 days. You get an agenda ahead of time. On that agenda are things that may require research. That needs to be done before we sit down at the meeting. And you may have questions. You may have information that you need. That needs to be done ahead of time. And I find that that means different things to different people. The agenda is also publicly available. And so while it is your job to inform the public, in the meeting, it might not always be the best forum for that. They can call you, they can ask questions, they can put it comment cards for public comment and ask questions. An hour education on a topic that you know about that requires a decision, it might not, the purpose of educating the public, that might not be the best place for that in that moment. Those are things you have to decide. And so this doing of homework is really critical, because I find that, not necessarily here, but I have found in working with other elected officials, that doing your homework means I know a little bit about it. Now I'm going to ask questions of the staff while we're in the meeting. And those questions could have been asked prior to the meeting so that we can get to that decision. And not just the decision, but the conversation that you all have to have, because it's the only time you can have those conversations. You can have conversations with your constituents anytime. Well, anytime you're not working, that you're available. Make sense? That's a big one. So, so do your homework. Excellent. Questions or comments so far? Comments? Okay. Don't jump to conclusions regarding citizen feedback. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Not here. We were at a city. We were working with a city, and there was a whole community outrage around shade in a new dog park. There was no shade in the new dog park. So citizens came and made comments, and some decisions were made on the dais to add shade to the dog park. That directive went to Parks Maintenance. Parks Maintenance looked into it, and they bought some units for shade, to add shade. They bought 3 of them. They installed them. Hundreds of people came out to tell them how awful they were. So within 2 months, those units, those pieces that were installed for shade, were now uninstalled, and I'm not sure what they did with them. But the very loud voice of a few made a decision on the dais that cost thousands of dollars in not just the units themselves, but in the labor to install them and then uninstall them. So that's one example. And we've got several of examples like that, where decisions are made based on customer feedback that might not have been the right feedback. One of the ways that, and you probably, do you guys do a citizen survey?
We haven't passed. We need to do one.
Do what? I'm sorry.
Citizen survey.
So a lot of organizations will do a community survey,
A few years ago.
and you can adjust those questions. So I think Jupiter had the opportunity to do 20 questions, 20 extra questions.
As I recall, yes.
I think it was, so you hire a company to do a citizen survey, and then depending on the level that you pay for, you get an opportunity to design your own questions. Boynton Beach just did their first one, and they only had 5 extra questions. They took the survey that's standard, and they just did their first one. So that's one way to use data, real data, with a lot of citizens to create decisions around something that may cost a lot of money. That's one mechanism. There's other mechanisms. So just be careful of that. Conduct yourself at commission meetings in a professional, business-like manner. Disagree with the recommendation. Don't attack the messenger. So that's a big deal. And again, we have examples. Trying to think of one that might be appropriate. We have examples where we've seen sort of the attacking of the messenger or the attacking of another elected official, when what we really want to do is disagree with the topic or the content. Okay, this is another big one. We've seen this. We haven't seen it here, but we've seen this in other cities, so we're going to bring it up. Don't play stump the person. So what that means is you have an issue with the public, not you, but an elected official has an issue with, let's say, the Public Works Director. So something comes up on the agenda, it has to do with Public Works, you call the Public Works Director up to the podium, and you start grilling this person with questions that perhaps they can't answer, and now they feel awful about it. And that's what best practices. We saw this in a couple of different cities. It says don't play stump the person. So that's what that means. So here's another one that all of our cities that we looked into, what they do is in addition to their visioning session, they also have commission team building and goal setting workshops. So the city of Port St. Lucie does actually 2 of them per year. So they do a visioning, strategic planning session, and then they do a team building goal setting session separate. So that's something that we took from them. Okay, and I think this is the last one. So honor the role of the presiding officer in maintaining order and equity, demonstrate effective problem-solving approaches, be respectful of people's time. I don't recall your commission meetings going way late.
They used to, prior to us.
Okay, I've only watched this elected body's commission meetings because that's when we were brought in. But sometimes I watch the city of Fort Lauderdale and they go till early hours of the morning.
We used to.
That's what we used to.
And so be respectful of people's time. Be prepared. Again, review items, discuss them, talk to the city manager about things ahead of time, and then submit questions on the commission agenda ahead of time so that, again, if you know you're going to call the Public Works Director to the podium, at least allow that person to be prepared to answer those questions instead of feeling like they can't and then they feel stupid about that. So those are the team guidelines. Again, these are not you can see these are not policy oriented. They are team guidelines.
And will we get a copy of those?
Yeah, you have a copy of the PowerPoint available?
We have them.
We haven't
Yeah,
seen
we
it.
haven't seen them yet.
Okay. Yeah, you have it. So that you can take this. And so I'm not going to ask a question now because I want to introduce the 2 other tools and then we'll come back to what do we want to do with this. But before we leave this, do you have any questions or comments around these?
No.
Okay. So hearing none, come back to this set of guidelines. So let's talk about consensus. So consensus is a process. I kind of like to draw consensus out. So if this is Melinda and I, and we disagree, the only place we agree is perhaps right here. Trust me, we can go on till the wee hours of the morning debating who's right and who's wrong and who's better and who's worse and what should we do and what shouldn't we do. I just distracted myself. If anyone's interested, Thomas Kilman has a consensus and conflict model. It's public. We use it with permission. We teach this in the Leadership Academy in the conflict class. And so it's a good tool to use, and it'll explain a little bit better what I'm explaining now. But if this is Melinda and I, and the only place that we agree is here, we could compromise. So what is compromise? Compromise means Melinda gives up all this, and I give up all this, and we do this. That's compromise.
Yay.
It's okay. It's not a great yay for me. I definitely didn't want to give this up. But sometimes I have to, because that's compromise. She could shut me down. She could shut me down and get all of what she wants, and then all I get is this little piece. I could shut her down, and then she gives up all that, and all she gets is this little piece. Or we could compromise, and this is, again, in the Thomas Kilman model. Or we could compromise, or we could collaborate. And when we collaborate, we get consensus around some different resolution that encompasses everything that she wanted, everything that I wanted, plus more. And that's what collaboration looks like. Is that in my head?
No. Anyone have a phone near an electronic device?
I don't hear anything.
Or by a microphone?
No.
Okay, well, as long as it's not only me. So, we have a model to try to get to consensus. Why is listen, there's nothing wrong with compromise, except that I gave something up because you twisted my arm. When we vote, and I'm on the losing end of that vote, I'm on the two out of not three, I got to go along with it because that's the vote. That's the way politics works. But how I feel about that, I wasn't heard. I didn't get a say. You guys didn't consider what I wanted. Because if you did, maybe I still didn't vote for it, but I don't walk away resentful. That makes sense? So what we want to do, oh, thank you. What we want to do is we want to create two things. We want to create a process by which we can collaborate on something, and maybe that's not possible. Why? Because maybe this costs too much. Maybe this costs too much. So maybe we have to compromise. So how do we do it in a way that I don't walk away resentful? So the next time I come up here, I'm not argumentative and angry. So here's a consensus model. It is really, really, really easy. So it's a what we call thumbs up, thumbs down model. You used it a little bit before, right? So here's how this works. It's a little different from what you think. So something comes up, and I want to know how everybody feels about it. Now, there's feeling and then there's thinking. I want to know how everybody feels about it, and I want to know how everybody thinks about it. So I ask, where are we with this? We do this in our team meetings. Where are we with this? Are we taking the client? Are we not? Are we doing this? Are we not? How's this going to work? So where are we at? Thumbs up is I'm all on board, 100%. I get it. I'll lead the charge. I'll manage the project. I'm in. That's what this means. This means, yeah, I can live with it. It's not my first choice. It's not what I would choose. I think you did this Tuesday. You said, not my first choice,
Yep.
but I'll vote yes. That's this. I can live with it. I can live with it. Here's what this means. If everybody is here or here, we move on without resentment, without wondering if we're going to jab each other later. This means I can live with it and I give up my right to whine about it later. That's what this means. Okay? So what does this mean? This means, here's what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean, I don't like it, I'm not talking about it anymore. It's not what it means. This means, hey, I don't think we considered something. Can I speak? Can I have the floor? This means, I don't think I was heard. And we're going to cover that in just a moment. This means I don't think I was heard. I'm not sure you understand my perspective, what I think. Can I come to the table with something? If thumbs down means I'm coming to the table with something. This means I can live with it. And this means I'm in, no more discussion needed. Does that make sense? Now you can choose to use it or not. It's a tool. And again, we teach it in the Leadership Academy, and we teach it pretty much everywhere we go. But what it does is it really helps us create a space for, this isn't my first choice. This isn't what I would choose, but I can live with it. And I won't whine about it later because we're a 3-2 vote.
One of the nice things about this consensus tool is it helps to remove judgment, right? So if I've got some concerns and I'm kind of doing this, or even if I'm doing this, I know that the other people around the table, the other three of us, they're not saying, oh, that Melinda, she's always contentious, We understand what that means. It's removing that judgment, and it allows us to continue that robust dialogue. And either I move to here, or maybe I even move to here. Once I feel like I'm heard and I've gotten my concerns addressed, then maybe I'm all in. Okay, so it helps to remove judgment, in my opinion, from it. So.
Questions?
What do you do so how do you find consensus if you've got thumbs down?
So, what do you do when somebody's thumbs down? So, they have the floor, and they come to the table with something. Data that wasn't analyzed, their perspective on something that we didn't consider. Maybe something new that in doing their homework, they researched, they found something new, and they want to bring it to the table and discuss it. The goal is for everybody to be thumbs up or thumbs sideways.
And what do you do when they're not?
Again, they can't just thumbs down and not come to the table with something.
But what if they're thumbs down and they come to the table with just an opinion or no documentation or no backup, so to speak, and they're just, I heard, I read, I did,
I feel.
but there's no documentation. You're not physically bringing anything to the table, and it just pontificates and goes on and on.
Is there an opportunity to say, let's table this, bring some documentation to the table.
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity for that? That's one idea.
Well, I think what happens is both. I mean, sometimes there's well-known issues where everybody kind of knows where everybody is. And you're going to have that. There are sometimes issues that come up where there might be an alternative.
Well, I gave a I was at a League of Cities or some chewing right now. A League of Cities meeting, and they had a meeting on meetings. And I went there. It was several years ago, and it was a different commission at the time. And I said, so, and they were having a meeting on Robert's Rules and this and that. And I said, well, what do you do when a commissioner or commissioners don't follow the rules? And the answer was, well, they have to follow the rules. And I said, again, what do you do when someone doesn't follow the rules? They have to follow the rules. Again, he said that to me. That wasn't an answer. You know, I mean, it is the answer because you say you're supposed to be respectful and supposed to be and this and that.
So my first question is, does this commission have a set of rules
Mhm.
that we know about, that everybody knows about?
Mhm.
So then we have to follow the rules. So,
What happens when you don't follow the
so,
rules?
so.
Well, there are rules. There are rules and things that I maybe could have taken at that time that I saw as extreme in the removal of people or I mean, there's rules to handle any situation.
Sometimes I think there's also questions of the interpretation of the rules.
Bingo.
Right.
That's where that gets, and then you start to get off of these big picture, and it comes down to it devolves down into a constitutional dilemma.
Correct. Correct.
You know, not constitutional, but a Robert's rule.
Commissioner Harding.
I'm sorry.
And so I think sometimes you find that there's disagreement, not necessarily because there's disagreement about what the facts are, but there might be disagreement about what the facts mean. There might be disagreement because we're at an ideological impasse or of values. There's a difference in values that might cause two people who are looking at the same information and might agree that the information is true and factual as a premise, but their values might lead them to conclude different things about that information. And I wonder where we how does one go from here to here
That's what
when because of a value that you might have or an ideology that you might carry, you might not be able to live with something. I mean, you don't want to be, a donkey, so to speak, but you can't live with something, because it doesn't sit well with you.
And at the end of the day, if you're the only one that it doesn't sit well with, you're going to live with it anyway because you're going to be in a 4-1 vote
Sure.
or a 3-2 vote if you have another colleague. So that's something that's going to happen because you're in politics, and that's just going to happen. The use of the tool helps us to better understand where we are and what we want. Now, going back to this question, my question is, do you have a set of rules that everyone understands? And so that's a workshop that you may want to have in the future. And again, as a part of your strategic planning workshops, those things could get accomplished as a part of that. But we have to be willing to do that. We have to be willing to go down that path.
From staff's perspective, because we're kind of caught in the middle of the most controversial dust-ups that have occurred have been a variety of issues that were probably brought to the commission agenda individually, whether they represented, an issue that was perceived to be part of are jurisdictional issues, or it was a new innovative kind of approach to a land use issue.
Or a national issue.
You know, the great majority of work, 90% of the work of this body and this city gets done. There's a lot of consensus that what joins y'all together is greater than what divides you. But what divides you in these debates and the formats that you're grappling with are things that they're very passionate about. And maybe along with this consensus building is maybe, you know, back upstream before something actually gets to the agenda that you know is going to be controversial. There's a better process to handle those. We don't know. I've tried to facilitate some things and processes to do that better, but we still have this, you know, and eventually you get a 3-2.
We couldn't get agreement on.
You're just going to get, and you're right. At the end of the day, somebody will lose. That model right there shows you you're on the losing side of the vote. How to do that without losing the big picture of what this body's trying to accomplish, because you all care about the city, and you've got big strategic goals and things you want to do, and it doesn't devolve down to that bad feelings. You know, this is a tool, but it's only as good as the people using it want to use it.
And we've got another tool that will help. Melinda, and then.
So there were two things that I heard. The one question that I don't think we quite addressed with our consensus tool, or with our rules actually, is when we developed our team guidelines for us, and when we go through this exercise with other leadership teams or other elected bodies, one of the other pieces to this is how do you call somebody out, right? And, you know, we're not talking about going up to somebody and slapping them. It's like, you know, we all agreed to these rules, and one of our big things is the other three will overtalk all the time. And we're in a meeting together trying to get business done, and that's just not me. I will sit there quietly and begin to stew. And then one of them notices that I haven't spoken for 20 minutes, right? And they'll say, oh, did you? And I'm like, you guys have been talking for 20 minutes. I have no idea what anyone said because everybody was talking at once. So how did they decide that we would call that out? They gave me a train whistle. And when I go to meetings, I take my little train whistle, and if they start that, I kind of blow it. Everybody has a laugh. I mean, I know you can't blow a train whistle in your commission meetings, but what I'm telling you is that you can come up with, again, a non-judgmental, non-caustic way of saying, you know, let's follow our own rules. We came to this agreement ourselves. So I think that was one of your questions, is how do we bring that up? And then, as Mike said, and I know that this is what I've seen in my city life government, is that when we had issues that were either volatile or they were going to be sensitive in nature, you know, our mayor and council members would kind of funnel all of that through the manager's office. And if it was, say, as you brought up, the planning and zoning issue, we may have gotten the planning and zoning staff to kind of work through some of these issues before you're coming to the dais. You know, so you have some availability and ways that you can use the manager. Sorry, I didn't mean to say use you, but
And again, we work in a multitude of different cities. This is a common practice. This is not anything that's out of the ordinary. There's a very common practice. City manager has regularly scheduled meetings, whether it's every Monday or every Tuesday or whenever it is, with each and every person on the elected body, and they provide you information, you provide them information, and that's how, you know, work and information gets funneled back and forth. This is your liaison, and that is a very common practice.
And it works very, very well. And you can take care of a lot of things before you even come up to the meeting. Because one staff is prepared, they've been directed through the manager's office to, get additional information or to provide additional research or whatever it is that you might need so that the decision becomes easier for you. So if you're down here, maybe you're able to get the information even before to come to here. You still want to have your say during the meeting and talk about those things, but you're maybe not here at that point.
But we do that. We have that. And we arrange that, and it's been brought out at some meetings that that's not acceptable. Having our meetings with the city manager, and did you see that meeting?
So again, I think that there's some misunderstandings and there's some things that are just not clear. So we can't fix that in the next hour, but
Where's your magic wand that you talked about?
but we can be willing to work on that, come this next fiscal year as something, as a commission goal. I mean, commissions have, so the city has goals, commissions have goals. I mean, there are policy issues and practice issues that ought to be listed in your strategic plan. So, and again, there's some best practices. We can show you some good ones, and some that are not as far along. Those things are not set up in advance. And so in some cities, in many cities, the policy decisions and the things, the goals of the commission that are just among you, that don't have to do with city staff necessarily, those goals can be set up in your strategic plan moving forward. And then that gets worked on, workshop by workshop.
Did you still have a question?
Please.
Thank you. I'm not really sure how I want to even approach this, but, I've heard it said that words matter. Okay. And, sometimes folks will, from this day, still start throwing out words as if they mean something. And one of the words is consensus. We just had a discussion about this 2 meetings ago. And I really want to, because I don't think we did this tonight, I don't think you presented this, but I really want to talk about the definitions or the concept of consensus, because as I read that, it's how I feel about the word consensus. And the reason I bring it up is because I think it is, if you don't have consensus and you're a person who isn't part of that consensus or the other piece of that consensus, you give that impression to the public that everybody's on board with this and that somehow it's now gospel and it's going to happen, and it's what I'm getting at is I just really want you to make sure we cover this, the definition. And just because someone says, well, we have consensus, does not mean you have consensus based on what you're presenting to us this evening.
Not a majority.
It's not a majority. It's, as you
Everyone.
say. And the thing that really sticks out in your description and your PowerPoint, which is really, I think, very interesting, is the second bullet point that states that consensus depends, and I was going to ask you about that word, on having shared values and goals. The question I was going to ask you is, would it read better or more impactfully if it was consensus is dependent on having shared values and goals?
We didn't have Marcy look at this.
Well, do you see where I'm going with this? This is how you interpret the word depends. And if you have a body of 5 and you've got one person or 2 people or you've got 3 different positions on the issue, then you don't have shared values and goals necessarily.
So again, shared values and goals are really important. I don't think that this body has necessarily gone down that path yet. I think your visioning session started, this process, and it's a process, and it takes, we've mapped out a 2-year process starting this year. So you're starting down this path. those shared values and goals can be worked on. And yes, they are necessary for consensus. Now, at the end of the day, we can continue to vote, and that will be ultimately the way that we make decisions.
But the government, but they require us to have consensus as to whether to bring something forward again as an agenda item, and getting consensus. We shouldn't be asking us for consensus. We should have to vote on
It's
it.
the wrong term.
It's the wrong term, because consensus is not. Because normally when we've asked for consensus, we've had at least one dissenting person, and we've said, "Oh, okay, well that's
Not consensus.
it's not really consensus. It's a majority, or it's a not just a
And ultimately, elected bodies are run on majority.
right." So is a majority consensus when we're asked to give a consensus on an item, whether or not to bring it back?
Again, I don't know the policy, and I'm not going to
Okay,
look at the semantics of.
city clerk.
I mean, not only.
She doesn't know off the top of her head either.
Yeah,
Look that up.
I mean, if that's an.
It's been an issue.
And if that's something that you want to work on, it's something that we can work on. I'm guessing it's the attorney would probably be the better.
And your third bullet point, the last bullet point, clearly says that consensus implies that everyone accepts and supports the decision and understands the reasons for making it. So I guess what I'm getting at is we need to be sensitive to the idea that we should not use words inappropriately. In other words, if we're looking for a majority vote on something to go in a direction, then we need to say, well, do we have a majority of a positive reaction to this issue that we want to bring it forward? That's one thing. But to use the word consensus is inappropriate, and I took exception to it 2 meetings ago. Didn't work out real well for me, but that was part of the agenda, and it wasn't,
Yeah, I don't know what your policy states. I don't know how the protocol of your particular meetings. If you look at other commission and council meetings, they're all run a little bit differently. And I mean, I just watched Hallandale's, and in essence, the clerk ran the meeting.
wow.
And the mayor looked at the clerk, and the clerk said what the clerk said, and then the mayor repeated it.
That
And
happens in some cities. You'll see all kinds of ways.
Deborah,
yeah, there's all
Deborah,
kinds. I mean, there's all kinds
you're on
of
deck.
there's all kinds of ways. There's all kinds of ways to do
Do
it. In
not give her
Jupiter,
a
the
job.
clerk isn't involved at all, except to record. So it's different. Commissioner Hardy.
Well, I think I might agree that you shouldn't use consensus if consensus isn't what you mean. But I guess the question is, what really should we be using? I mean, I guess, could it be the case if consensus means that, which means that, you got all 5 people who are sharing a feeling on the dais, which sometimes might not be possible. Should the city manager therefore be looking for consensus really at all? Or should he be looking for something else that can help give him direction? Like, yeah. Well, because to me, I had the weird experience of teaching the Articles of Confederation today, and one of the problems with it was that it took 13 out of 13 states to change the article. So 9 out of 13 states to pass, so nothing could get done. And so so things get put on our desk, and then we have to do something, and we might not all have the same feelings about stuff, and this guy's got to do something, and consensus might not be achievable, and yet something has to be done based on a combination of our feelings.
Here's my question,
Yeah.
and this is the crux of the issue. This is really what it comes down to. How do you want to run this elected body? And that's a decision that only you can make. And it's not about the words. It's not about, whether we use this word or that word. It's more about how do you want to run, how does this elected body want to run their meetings?
And I've done it I ask for consensus. If I don't have consensus, I look for what the majority of interest is, just to move the items forward into that. But that's when comes either back to the original thing that we discussed, which either comes goodness gracious. We either have to co-create, to change based on when you're talking about it, or you have to compromise. And that comes to the item, because based on the passion levels, based on, and it's my job to run the meetings with all the things that are going on. So I say first I try to find consensus when it's bringing an item back. Then it's okay, what's the majority of people are interested in bringing this back as an item? So I use that because I can't get consensus. And then the next move is when it comes on the item, knowing the passion levels that are to listen, bring your items, bring your solutions, bring all of those things to the table. And from there, we work on getting a unanimous vote or co-creating something that we can all live with, or then compromising.
And going to your point about, how do you want to run your meeting, I would suggest, Madam Mayor, that we just dispense, generally speaking, with the word consensus. And you, as the team leader at the dais, say, what's the majority of the commission? What's your will? Do you want to bring this back or not? Then we don't get into an issue over semantics or what does it mean, what it doesn't. Why put us through that? Just say, hey, do I have 3 people up here that are the 3 of us at least that agree on this, that we should bring it forward?
Maybe
excused.
No,
We need to take a quick break.
oh, you do?
We need to go.
Guys are starting to,
Bathroom breaks.
Because I want to follow up when he comes to the office.
Yeah, I'd need a bathroom break too.
Okay, so why don't we take a 5-minute break?
thanks.
And then when we come back, Commissioner Amoroso, you
Yes, thank you.
wanted to say something?
It wasn't me. I didn't.
Thank you, Jess.
Exactly.
Madam Mayor, we're back.
Okay, let's resume this City of Lakewood Beach
Let's investigate
workshop.
this.
We already enough.
I don't see any
Does anyone want this
butterfingers.
Twizzler? I'm gonna get Twizzled. Thank you.
We're back on. We're being recorded. Hello, we're
Candy
recording.
bite.
So we were leaving off on a conversation,
I'm gonna get zits.
details of some of the issues with the meetings, right?
Commissioner Ambrose. I think
Yeah,
is up.
so we'll take a couple more comments, then we'll wrap up this section, and we have another tool we want to offer having to do with communication.
I wanted to jump over to something that the city manager alluded to, and I wanted your thoughts on. So, sitting on boards for the Florida League of Cities and the National League of Cities, it's very clear that these are local issues and these are national issues. And occasionally, a few of them cross over, but we're very articulate in, no, that's a local issue, that's a national issue. Quite often, things come to the dais that, are really a national issue, and, I question, should we be taking it up? But a lot of times it's in the heat of the passion and it's want to be brought forward. Should that be in our policies and procedures that we only deal with local issues? How is there something written that local municipalities deal with local issues and this is the structure that it looks like? How do you interpret that?
So I'm unfamiliar with any elected body that we work with that deals in national issues at all.
Okay.
I'm unfamiliar with that. So if it happens, I don't know. Do you have a different perspective?
The only things that I have seen in the past is if a commission or a council wants to get involved in a national issue, is that generally they request staff bring a resolution forward. And that's where the discussion happens and whether it gets adopted or not. And the resolution that is asked for is what directs the manager and the staff to proceed with that. So that's how I've seen it handled in the past.
So, but I think the question is do you want that to be to have a local elected body deal in national issues? And I don't think we can answer that question for you. We can only tell you how we.
Traditionally, it's not done, but you had said it's done with a resolution, because quite often it's brought, and I think that's one of our biggest topics, or one of my biggest topics that I get emails or phone calls. Why is this being addressed on a local level when there's really nothing we can do on a local level? Is it just a resolution of a message of support, or is it something that we don't do on a local level because of A, B, and C? I
Yeah, and look, that's been. I'm trying to manage my comfort and access to this microphone. That's been an issue. I think that's been discussed in the past. My feeling has been I've been one of the people who have brought forward, or supported the bringing forward of a resolution on what might be seen as a national issue. For example, gun violence, right? So a resolution, asking, the state legislature to pass a law about, yada, yada, yada. And, my feeling is we pass resolutions all the time in favor of all manner of things that we have absolutely nothing to do with. We don't have any efforts around food security, but we do proclamations about, this is National Food, such and such day. We provide no services, for food for people who are needy, et cetera. But we recognize that from time to time, we want to use the voice and the mantle that we have to send a message to people who matter and who might consider that. And so I recognize that not everyone on the dais might feel the same way about that particular issue. At the same time, for every person that emails us about, why are we taking up this issue? There's another person who emails us or stops us at Publix and says, when are you guys going to say something about this? And I guess, my standard is kind of, like the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. My question is, what harm is done in tangible terms by passing a resolution asking the state legislature to pass a red flag law or something of that nature. And if it's not going to harm our ability to deliver services that we take care of on a local basis, I personally don't see a need to restrict the kinds of discussions that we can have, because I think that's one of our functions, is to say stuff and to stand for stuff. I think we've called a truce on that, recently, but that's, I wouldn't want to codify anything that would prevent us from having discussions about matters. And what I would say is, in Parkland, gun violence might not have been a local issue until it happened. There now, it's a local issue. It's a local issue in Broward. And I think sometimes the line between what's a local issue and a national issue is a matter of timing. And I think sometimes, it's blurred. These national issues happen at a local level all the time.
Thank you for your comment.
From our process on the city's management side, it's difficult a lot of times to get clear direction when y'all go through these processes, putting things on the agenda that may be difficult for some commissioners to be put in a position where they don't want to have to take a position one way or the other. It works both ways. There are plenty of national issues, especially in this day and age in this country. We're a very divided people, and we can choose a congressional model which is very much about, you vote this way, I'm going to get you on the next vote, because there's always another vote coming, and you start to see that divisiveness ingrain itself to dysfunction. And I really encourage not adopting that congressional mindset where every issue is winner is going to take all, because truly it's a distraction from what you're doing here in this city. And so there is a downside. Intellectually, I think you're correct, but from a pragmatic standpoint of working together with this team, I think sometimes y'all have to take off your national hats, because there are issues that could be brought up that divide this group, because y'all do have different ideologies maybe on the national level. And while some of the things that you would grapple with, you can do it in other outlets probably just as effectively. It gets frustrating for staff to find that debate poisoning the well, or when we try to get the rest of the policy issues handled. And I don't think there's any necessarily a right or wrong on that. I'm not trying to take sides. I'm just saying from a process standpoint, and from what I've seen happening here with the personalities around the table, and Herman included, choosing how you run your process and the issues you grapple with matters, because it does put at risk the things that really matter to you in the seat that you have up here. And from my perspective, I need you guys present and focused on those issues that matter about city operations and the health of the city and where we're going. I do believe, though, you guys are focused in on defining the word consensus and how and when to use a Robert Rules of Order, or when debate ends. And I'm trying to get you guys to lift your head up and say, strategic planning matters. The big policy discussions that we need to be having about this city and where resources and staff time and energy, we need to be spending more time and effort and energy going into those discussions so that y'all can have a cohesive policy discussion. Not that you're going to agree, but process does matter in government, in local government especially, because we don't have sessions. We run year round. We deal with things, and there's a lot on your plate. There's huge, large dollar decisions that are coming down the pike, and we're trying to figure out how to process this, keep the group together, not having everybody spinning off, because you know what? There's a meeting in next week that I need everybody here and present and ready to go. And there's a meeting the next week after that. And oh, by the way, for the next 3 years, We're going to be transforming, this whole aspect that's been sitting around for 50 years. You guys are problem solvers. I mean, it's an amazing group. It's amazing what y'all have accomplished. And I think if we can get to those meaty discussions on what truly are the policy issues and how we're going to address them using each one of your colors and your talents involves a process that we haven't gotten down yet. We just haven't nailed it. We haven't found the sweet spot. And I'm hoping that this discussion is getting us kind of closer to that. But I just wanted to get that. Avoid the congressional model. Avoid doing things potentially that doesn't have the same weighted value as your votes and decisions in this role to do other things that you do. Because you all have different perspectives on things outside of this city. And kind of wish you'd almost leave it out of here sometimes.
So what I think I hear you saying is that if everything's important, then nothing's important.
Correct. That's the gridlock in Congress.
So the way that we get past that is a strategic planning process that helps to identify what are the priorities of the city, and the decisions that we make must align with those priorities.
Yes.
And that is the way city government works.
Functional, healthy cities that are all around us, and I forget how many hundred here in the state of Florida. That's how they run, and that's how they're successful.
So it's not for us to decide, now that we have a half an hour left. However, some things to consider as you move forward, because as Melinda and I have watched many commission meetings since the 5 of you have been on the dais, there does seem to be some confusion around priorities and values. And again, that's a part of this process that we can do moving forward. So consensus does require alignment to those priorities, and those priorities need to be to be decided upon for future meetings, not for tonight. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And along with that will come sort of this process, and a process to decide how to run the meeting. What is the best way to run the meeting? And cycling back around, the way that we use the word consensus is not this. So that's just putting that out there. So our final tool around communication. One of the things that we noticed is that on the dais, we don't necessarily listen to understand other people's perspectives. It's one page, there should be 5 of them. Or more.
I have an extra.
Or an extra. So here's what this looks like. And we use this in our organization, and we use this with senior teams and elected bodies. Here's how this works. And I'm going to sort of redraw what you have so that now you have a copy of it, but just to be able to explain it. So this is Melinda, and this is Trina. And we are trying to have a discussion on something that's contentious. Typically what happens is Melinda speaks, Trina listens. If we don't have a good relationship, if Melinda and I do not have a good relationship, typically that's where it ends. We call for a vote, we decide, that's it. That's the end of that. If we have a good relationship, or if the process allows, Trina asks questions, right? So we're kind of going around this circle. We've done this in Leadership Academy a million times. We've gone around this circle. If I ask a question, Melinda explains. Going around this circle. So we keep kind of going around this circle. This is what happens on the dais. And we keep going around. We raise our hands and we get called, mayor calls on us, and we go around. Here's the piece that's missing. If every time Melinda explains, and I can have an opportunity to verify my understanding, now I'm listening to understand, and I have to actually force myself to listen to what she's saying rather than think about what I want to say. Because if I'm only thinking about what I want to say, I never really get or understand what she's saying. And then she gets repetitive because she doesn't think I get it. So she repeats it. So until I verify, so this is what we call clarify and verify. And the way it works is this. So what I think I hear you saying is, and then I repeat back in my own words what I think Mike is trying to say, or what I think Melinda is trying to say. And we, in Leadership Academy, we do this ad nauseum while we're having dialogue in the workshop. And so we model what this looks like. So anytime someone raises their hand and asks a question, senior team, same thing. City manager, I did it with Chris Lagerbloom recently. Say something. So let me just see if I understand correctly. What I think you're saying is this. Now you use your own words, whatever that amounts to. Now you may be thinking, well, we don't have time for that. Our meetings are already long. We're already going around in circles. I can guarantee you this. When you do this, people stop repeating themselves. We repeat ourselves because we don't think we're heard, or we don't think you understand. Now listen, there's a lot of times I do this and Melinda goes, no, that's absolutely not what I said. Okay, really? Because let me tell you, one thing I know for sure, when I speak, it's perfectly clear to me what I meant. And I guarantee you 100% when she hears me, she hears exactly what she thinks I'm saying. We just don't know that it matches until we do this. And that's the key. The key is to make it match. So even if we disagree, what I see happening is we go around in circles to try to debate the other person into seeing my side. It's okay to disagree. And I think that was the question that we were asking. How do we go from here to here? It's okay to disagree. You're going to disagree. The question is, can we disagree in a healthy manner? Can we disagree with understanding of what we're agreeing? If I'm going to go from here to here, I don't even know what I'm going from here to here unless I know what I'm going to. And again, if I look at Tuesday's meeting, I think Commissioner Maxwell tried several times to go, I don't even know what we're voting on here. Can someone, you know, and in the end it was, I'll go from here to here.
I'm having a problem with the connection. Please try again in a little bit.
That sums it all up.
That was
Okay.
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
I think Siri understood what you were saying. Sorry about that.
So this is just a process. It's a practice. It takes time, especially when we're emotionally charged. The last thing we want to do is take a breath and go, hey, let me just see if I understand you correctly.
Real quick, just for clarity. So what happens on our dais a lot of times is certain people talk a lot and then other people don't get to talk very much. So if we're verifying in between, we reach 30 minutes, we go to workshop. So, you know, quite often we get to 30 minutes, we go to a workshop, or, you know, there's conversation long enough to take us to a workshop. So I'm, you know, through the policies and procedures, I have no problem verifying. However, I see with our current policy that verifying everything will be going to a workshop.
Maybe. I don't know.
You know,
I don't know the
I'm
answer
just,
to that.
You know, throwing it out there. And
Goes back to when you said do your homework and have your meetings beforehand. The problem is that a lot of the reasons for it, if everybody done their homework and answered their question, they could literally come to that meeting and say, okay, item number 62, I don't agree with this item, and here's why I don't agree, X, Y, and Z. Next person could say, I agree with this item, and here's why I agree with this item, X, Y, and Z.
I
You
agree.
could all have that, and then we'd have a chance to go back and forth 1 or 2 times if we needed to, because we were succinct and we already had the information that we needed. And we could say, but the problem is that people like to repeat themselves because they don't believe that they have the agreement of the majority of people on the dais. So they feel that if I say things a different way or 17 times, it will eventually convince the other people to do it, when that's not the case, because they pretty much made their minds up at that point anyway. So
And this will help that, because it's really hard for Melinda. So if I say, so what I hear you saying is X, Y, and Z, and she says, yes, that's what I'm saying. And I say, okay, I just disagree.
right,
We move on.
that's exactly correct. But
We have to move on. There's no reason for Melinda to repeat herself, because now she knows I get what she's saying.
But it seems to instill drama and grandstanding and this and all these
Perhaps
other
it's
things.
a tool. It's just a tool at the end of the day.
No, I like it. though.
Yes, sir.
I'll abstain.
Yes, sir.
You know, I look at this model and, I equate it very much to, what I perceive to be effective two-way communication. And that is, I say something and you check for understanding. Okay, and we go back, like that. So this model is great. The problem that I have with it, the opportunity I see in it, is a small piece where you say, you want to listen to what everybody's saying and not be worried about what you're going to say, not thinking about what you're going to say. And going back to some of the comments that have been made here, sometimes this conversation just going back and forth, you can't keep up with all the thoughts that are being thrown out there, because you never know when you're going to get an opportunity to speak. Okay, so how do you bridge that? Because in my mind, there've been times over the years where I'll sit here and I'll listen. I want to say something and I'll get so confused, I don't even know what the heck we're voting on, because we've gone so far off the agenda item itself. So how do we do that? How do we assure that everybody's going to have an equal opportunity to speak if they wish? Okay, so we can implement the verifying aspect of what's happening.
So the answer to that is in the process, which I don't know that we have, and I don't know that we all understand the same way. So
Well, that's the thing when we get back to Robert's rules and those things, to say everyone gets one pass at it and one rebuttal on it, and that's how a lot of governments do those things. So when I try to enforce that, then it's, no, I have more to say and you can't silence me. That's why we're all here to hear these things. And it depends where you are on the subject. If everyone's going along with what you happen to be going for, then it's okay that I let you talk. And if it's not what you like, then it's not okay that I don't let you talk. And rules are rules. If you go with a policy or a procedure, they should be followed whether you're the one who someone's agreeing with or not
I
agreeing
don't know
with.
that we have them. I don't know that
Huh?
we understand them.
My blue comes out.
Because you want harmony and you're getting.
And I'm trying to bend the rules from what our rules really are to give everyone the feeling that they're getting heard and they're being listened to.
blue card.
I'm bending it.
She's using this to try to get everybody to calm down and work.
Yeah.
I understand that.
And sometimes it's
And
wishy-washy.
no, but I used to be in other commission dynamics though. I used to just sit there all day and bang this and play to the rules, nothing but the rules. But I've been trying to do it a different way.
Again, I don't think that we have set rules that we all agree on and that we all understand the same way, and so I think that's part of the situation that you're in. Yes.
I agree with Commissioner Maxwell when he says that this appears to be an effective model of two-way communication. Whether or not two-way communication is what we're doing is another question, because there's another party in that room who is entitled, I think, and this isn't ideological or values issue, to the information and a thorough fleshing out of the issues, who are entitled enough to these things to be able to hold us accountable in the future, or in the present. And I think that's also a part of why we communicate in the public. You know, if we wanted to, we could do all this at 7 a.m. over breakfast. But I think one of the reasons why we have sunshine is so that other people can not only watch us make decisions, because they could read minutes and observe decision making take place, but so that they can hear our thought process play out, and figure out whether or not they like us, or how much they like us, or whether or not there's something that we don't know about their experiences that is relevant to the conversation, so that the next time we have it. And so I you know, we've had these discussions about how much discussion should take place and what's the purpose and role of discussion on the dais. I think that's something that get missed. Perhaps that's not the consensus of this board, but I think that that's a dynamic that I think we should be aware of. You know, the other thing, you know, for example, as
Hang on, before you go any further, let me just see if I understand.
yeah,
So what I think you're saying is that your ideological, philosophical viewpoint of your position as an elected official is to come to the dais to discuss the issues that are important and talk it out so that the public can hear how you think, what you have researched, what you're putting forth, and how you're making that decision. Did I get that right?
yeah, I think part of our job is to deliberate in public as well as decide.
Okay.
You're all green, man.
Yeah,
You're a
Okay.
teacher.
So
Yeah.
I think I got that part. Now the second part was,
I agree with the mayor and with you and with others who say that we need a common understanding of what the rules mean. I think we probably have more disputes not over whether we should follow the rules, but about what the rules actually are. And I think that that's something we should address so that we're working from the same premises. You know, when I look at like a common thing is about the one pass thing, and you know, one rebuttal. That's you know, for example, when I read Robert's rules, I don't see that in there, and you know, Robert's rules is kind of messy. It allows for messy stuff to happen in an orderly way. You know, there's even a part in Robert's rules that says when two people disagree, the floor is just supposed to alternate between those people until the disagreement is settled. That's something that's in there. It's a 700-page book. You know,
are you using Robert's rules?
we have a combination. We have our commission rules, and where our commission rules don't speak to something, we revert to Robert's rules. And so it's a combination of stuff. But I think that it would be really great if we invested in coming to an understanding about what these rules mean and how we're going to use them. And I think maybe that's something that the commission could or should do probably on a regular basis, because different people in the future, 10 years from now, might be up here, you know, and they have to do the process all over again. But
We did it for years and never had an issue with doing it. Now all of a sudden we have an issue with doing it. So that's what sort of I get resentful of it, because I've never had that issue before. The other thing that bothers me is how to, you know, we could use all of these fancy Robert's rules to try to, gotcha, in the middle of a situation, but we can't get everyone to obey just the most basic Robert's rules, which are don't talk out of turn, speak when you're addressed, don't debate with one another and argue with one another on the dais when you haven't been called, don't speak when you don't have the floor.
At the end of the day,
I can't even control those basic ones, but you want to talk about
at the end of the
ones?
day, you can, if we don't agree on the process, then we're going to do it each our own way.
And it's disrespectful to me because I run the meetings and they're not even obeying the basic, polite, courteous levels of Robert's rules. But you want to talk about these big things and you can't. I mean, it's my job to do that. Every other government around us does that. And everyone thinks that I'm shutting them up or silencing them because I'm doing my job, when it's simply basic respect.
And I agree with you. We probably need to clarify our policies and procedures a little bit more. But I was always under the influence that the city's policies and procedures are what we follow. It's only been recently that, we revert to Robert's rules, which we never did before. I don't remember doing that. But I also personally revert back to our policies and procedure. And at the end of the day, the mayor leads your meeting, and the mayor's comments, and the mayor leads, and the mayor will, shut it down when needed. And, I have never sideswiped the mayor or questioned her. I may be here, but I have never politically, the right thing to do is never, argue with your mayor or shut your mayor down, as far as, policies and procedures.
Yeah, so again, we can talk about what we did in the past. We can talk about where we are now. There needs to be, for this commission to work more effectively together, which is the purpose of addressing here in this workshop. In order for that to happen, we've identified a couple of things. You need some team guidelines. Those are not policy driven. You need some policies and procedures that you know about, that you agree upon, and that you're willing to abide by. All of you. And again, what's happened in the past is in the past, and where we are today is where we are today. And so those two things, at the very least, can take us forward. We've offered you a couple of tools, again, to understand what your comfort zone is, to understand what your preferences are, and why you approach things the way that you do. And then for you to understand, if that's the way I approach something, it could be seen as X, Y, and Z. And we'll provide you with more information, which when we write up the report, we'll send it to you individually, and we'll provide more information about that. And then the other couple of tools that we've offered out, use them or not, they're just tools. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say that, if we understand what's been presented this evening, the options that we have available to us, especially when you think about the idea that, and this has been brought up numerous times over the years, do your homework. Be prepared for the meeting. Now, fundamentally, I disagree with Commissioner Hardy as far as, and you said it earlier, if everything's important, nothing's important. So if we're going to have to go through an agenda every night where we're going to have to pontificate, one or more of us, on our position on the issue, it becomes meaningless. People don't want to hear people chatter. What they want us to do is to conduct the business. And when you talk about the concept of doing the homework, same applies in some respects to the general public.
Totally.
They have access to the agenda. You mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
They have an opportunity to call us. That's why we're here. That's why we exist. That's how the government's set up, is for the representatives to be, accessible and available to the citizenry when they have questions, concerns, whatever the case may, or an explanation that they like to have. So, but this isn't really, as the mayor said so eloquently over the years, this isn't an opportunity for discovery. We're here to conduct business. All the questions that need to be. Now, there are some issues that are clearly, in terms of priority or magnitude, much, much larger than others that will warrant an explanation from the mayor. This is why we're doing this, or this is the implications, but not every agenda item.
Well, those things will float to the top
Exactly.
through a process of prioritization.
Right.
Or the first readings. The first readings, we get the presentations from staff, and then whatever the second readings, sometimes I'll say, this is the second reading, the presentation has already been done, we've already had information from staff. Are there any additional questions, based on the last vote or whatever it is?
Again, those procedural issues, need to sort of be fleshed out. So in the last 5 minutes, we'd like to kind of get you to commit to, if not these guidelines, then having guidelines. However, whether you have another dialogue around it or having some discussion around it, you have the ones we've presented out there as best practices, but we'd like to get you to commit to having them. And creating them and getting commitment could be done through your strategic planning process. or it could be done through a separate workshop, whatever it is that you all decide to do. But we'd like to see if you will commit to doing that. We'd also like to see if you'll commit to using standard meeting approach. That's what we've been talking about, to discuss the agenda items. So again, that's your policy piece. We all approach it differently right now because we're not really clear on the rules.
Does it need a consensus?
I was just gonna say, excuse me, where you at?
Oh, I'm good. I just have one.
Where you at?
question.
Where you at? Chris Hardy.
Oh.
Yeah, okay.
I just, to your third point, commit to using consensus when making decisions. I'm getting a little confused because it's kind of a gray issue, because when we're making a decision up, we're voting. We're not going to say, well, let's see if we can achieve consensus first and then vote. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think perhaps what I meant on this bullet was, do we have consensus in understanding what we're voting on, understanding what everybody's perspective is. So the consensus and the communication loop kind of go together.
Gotcha.
That was kind of where I
Thank
was
you.
going with
Thank
that.
you for clarifying that.
So that's what we'd like. That's what we would like to see. And again, there's a variety of ways that this could be done, but I think that gets the needle, moving in that direction. And so, with that, I will ask for any final comments.
I just want to thank you and Myrna and Melinda for helping us through this process, and for giving us this presentation with these tools. I think these are things that we can incorporate, and we'll continue to be working on process and procedure and working together. I really love and respect this group that we have here. They are diverse, but you started off by saying, without a doubt, to a person, they care deeply about this city. They do in a different way, and they show it in a different way, but there is no question in my mind that this commission has the best interest and a deep love for this city. It's an honor to work with them.
And look how diverse we are. We're green, we're gold, we're orange, we're blue. We're the perfect team. We make it all up.
Absolutely. So with that, I will turn it back over.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you all.
Good night.
And thank you, my fellow commissioners.